Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about this ridiculous gluten scare and all these people who talk about gluten who really it has no impact on their lives in any way. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And the reason I want to talk about this is because two reasons, and again, not just because it's a fad, but because I've seen stuff personally here. Number one, the whole thing I did yesterday about Russell Wilson and this nutritionist having him avoid gluten as part of his body recomposition situation, a fat loss situation as an NFL athlete. Number two, I've met someone who claims that they're gluten intolerant and it's part of the reason that they're 100 pounds overweight. Okay, what people need to understand, I'm not going to go into my opinion, I'm going to go into the opinion of people who actually, number one, have medically certified gluten issues. I've known two, which I've only met two, and most of you probably don't know anyone who has a real gluten problem. And because this is what the leading experts in the world say, all the people in gastroenterologists, other types of medical doctors, registered dietitians, they're all going to tell you the only people in the world who need to have any concern over the protein gluten are people with celiac disease, and they make up less than 2% of the population. Now, incidentally, I've known two. I've known one who is a power lifter, and Brittany has a hair client right now who she works with who has celiac disease. And you know what they have in common? I'll tell you guys one of the characteristics of actually having a real food intolerance, a major one. They both lost enormous amounts of weight to the point of dangerousness, like way underweight to the point where they could die. All right, that's the number one sign right there that you have a major food intolerance. That's a dead giveaway. You start losing weight rapidly with no explanation. And I don't mean 10 pounds. I'm talking that if you weigh 200 pounds and you drop to 150 fairly quickly and you didn't really change your diet or exercise, all right, that could be a sign that you have a major food intolerance, like celiac disease. One of them, he was a power lifter who had dropped down to 120 pounds before they diagnosed his celiac disease. Why? Because it attacks your gastrointestinal system, attacks the lining of your GI tract. It makes you basically poop out the lining of your intestine, causes absorption issues for your body. You basically poop blood out every time you eat gluten. All right, it's a major autoimmune issue with the gastrointestinal system, your GI tract. All right, he dropped down to 120 pounds before he was diagnosed. Once he was diagnosed, got completely off gluten, he was able to rehabilitate all of that. And guess what? He then competed in the 242 pound class, or the 110 kilo class. He doubled his body weight by lifting weights, eating food, obviously a bit of gear and stuff involved. He doubled his body weight again. All right, but he lost weight rapidly. Same situation, the other person who we're friends with, who we know who has it now, guess what? She's underweight, and she has been struggling for 2 years to get back to a healthy body weight. I guess there's been enough damage to her GI tract. She struggles to absorb all the nutrients in her food, and she still needs to gain, for her frame size to be at the healthy range. She's on the low end of the BMI. Okay, she's quite thin. She still needs to gain another 10 to 15 pounds to be in ideal health, even according to her doctors. And it's been a slow process. It's one of those to where she struggles to gain a pound a month. She's very tall and weighs probably 100 pounds right now. So that's a sign of celiac disease. All these other people out there who think they have these gluten issues, you don't. As far as gluten allergies go, leading allergists in the world have come out and said they have never found a single documented case of gluten allergy anywhere in the world. There's not one that has been found. I'm not saying some people don't have wheat allergies, but you don't diagnose your own allergies, okay? People are generally not qualified to diagnose their own allergies. It's not a gluten allergy. You might have a wheat allergy, okay? But that doesn't mean you have a problem with gluten. There's gluten in other foods besides wheat. And furthermore, people come up with crazy ideas as far as what an allergy even is or what an allergy does. And people oftentimes think they have one and they describe it and they clearly don't know what an allergy is. They don't have the food allergy. They think they do. It's really, really common. Like if you don't break out in hives, you don't get swelling, maybe your throat doesn't swell, does cause trouble breathing or whatever when you eat the food, you probably don't have an allergy. I'm not saying you don't, but you know, if you're not experiencing stuff like that, you're probably not allergic to a food. All right, if your stomach gets upset eating something, that's not a food allergy. Probably not a food allergy. Allergies are systematic responses to any contact with it. Meaning, in other words, you'll experience problems around your mouth, your throat, everything as a result of eating something you're allergic to generally. I've known many people with food allergies. I have a food allergy. I'm not going to tell people what mine is, but I have one that's been diagnosed by a medical doctor. And they run in my family. My mom had one, my sister has one. They're all diagnosed. Medical doctors diagnosed it, said this is what you're allergic to. There are tests they can do for this. But people want to diagnose their own allergies. And here's the thing. All these people are acting like gluten is responsible for all these different problems when it really isn't. Gluten doesn't cause fat gain. Gluten doesn't cause you to lose performance. If anything, gluten is additional protein. Gluten's additional protein. And there are plenty of people around the world who are top level, world level athletes who eat gluten every single day. Every single day. And people will say, well, they're different. I have an intolerance. You don't have an intolerance. It's in your head. The only reason people are anti-grain is because of books they've read. All right? And I don't mean scientific books. I mean pseudoscience books, oftentimes written by people who don't have a medical background at all, who are just writing this stuff to write it. Things like books, paleo books, like a goofy book, Wheat Belly. And I want people to really think about that. If you were to look at it, how in the world would wheat even be considered a serious weight gain problem food? When you look at all the other foods in the world, in what world does anyone think that wheat is a major contributor to obesity? It's low in fat, it's fairly high in fiber, it's one of the highest fiber grains out there. Or not just high fiber, but highest protein. Because gluten is a protein. All that gluten is actually a protein. In fact, many people who choose to go vegan, wheat and pasta become very much staples in their diet because they oftentimes struggle to get enough protein to build muscle mass effectively. Eating grains that are high in protein is useful to them. And that's interesting. It's not as big of a deal to people who eat meat, people who are omnivorous. Not a big deal for you, but people who don't eat animal source protein at all actually find combining things like beans and pasta can actually help them reach their protein needs. Gluten's a protein. It has the other characteristics that people consume protein for, and it's not the highest grade protein in the world. It's not incomplete either. It's not the highest grade protein in the world, but that's what it is. It's just a protein. All right, this is as bad as people freaking out about fish protein. Picking some food, the type of protein combination in it, and saying, oh, this protein is a problem. It's just dietary protein. It's the 20 amino acids that are in all your other foods put together in a chain. That's what it is. And when you digest it, it breaks down into those amino acids before it's absorbed into your system, just like every other protein. Now, again, it's not the highest bioavailable combination of amino acids, not because they're not all there. They are, just maybe the ratios aren't as perfect as you might want for something compared to like egg whites or something like that. It's not quite as good, but it's still protein. That's all it is. But do you know what effects it does have like every other protein? It has the same satiety effects, and it has the same thermic effects. So if a person was trying to eat as high of a protein diet as possible, or a very high protein diet, and they were picking a grain, actually wheat or anything with gluten in it, actually becomes fairly attractive because a lot of these foods per calorie are reasonably high protein. I'm not saying they're high protein foods, but as far as a carbohydrate source goes, most of these high gluten foods are actually fairly high in protein for a carbohydrate source. They're some of the highest, and it actually works effectively for people with athletic goals. It works just fine. And again, there are athletes all over the world competing at the Olympics and winning who consume gluten every day. They consume gluten every day. The fact of the matter is there is simply no evidence other than fad diets in people's kooky books. And you've got to remember, these elimination diets people do are not always very good ways to determine if you have a problem with the food. But all things considered, when you look at the demographics of it, you look at the evidence, there's no reason to think that foods that contain gluten or that are high in gluten are contributors to obesity or contributors to disease or anything else. It's simply not seen in the statistics. This is a myth that's been part of multiple fad diets that have been used to sell people crappy products and crappy diet books that are not based on reality. They're not based on reality at all. The anti-gluten fad is a fad and a scam. It's not real. Gluten, unless you have celiac disease, all the top experts in the world agree is not a health concern for you. It's not even a weight gain concern for you. If anything, wheat and oats and barley, that's your gluten foods, wheat, oats, and barley, are some of the best carb sources and even fat loss sources of carbohydrates you could possibly find if you were to compare them on a case-by-case basis. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.